It's fair to say that the world is a multicultural place.
Of course.
Can everybody live in peace?
Everyone can live in peace because
No matter what religion?
of course, no matter what religion, because if I've come from a country whereby we've got over 500 languages, okay, and I've never seen a tribal war in my country, okay, and now, yeah, look at what's going on. It's sad, man. It's sad. It's so sad. You guys should be ashamed. You guys making the weapons and giving the weapons. You should be ashamed. You've got kids, and even if you've not got no kids, yeah, the money you're chasing, capitalism. Capitalism is fake. Capitalism is not real. Be a socialist. Be nice. Be kind. You know, have some compassion in you. Have some love in you. I know you're reptiles or dragons or whatever, but have some conscience, okay? And let everybody come together and solve this problem, okay? Israel, be nice, yeah? Israel is not the problem. It's Zionists. We know you, Zionists.
What gets my goat is that, like, they can all stand there shouting, but yeah, if you start sporting the Jewish people, you get shot down and moved on.
This is starting with the Nakba, and they've forgotten about that. They think it's all started on October the 7th.
I've just come here as a son of a Second World War serviceman in my own country, and I am seeing a Volsky mine shaft.
Actually, Israel in of itself is a destabilizer of the Middle East in the current moment in time.
They don't tell the world the truth. They were taken to Palestine as refugees, and then they changed Palestine to become a state of Israel by force of arms given to them by Americans and the British.
But is it true that you said Hitler didn't...
So I'm just going to have to make a point here.
I don't think Israel has a real answer to what the end game is in Gaza. What is the objective? There are three options that you hear when you listen to different Israeli commentators and politicians. The first, which is perhaps the most realistic option, is that they want to teach Hamas a lesson, get some good ceasefire terms.
The answer is that the people of Palestine need to be restored to their lands. They were driven off it in 1948, and they were promised a right of return when the British Army facilitated that being driven off. In Gaza now, you have one of the biggest open-air prisons in the world. That's what it's been called repeatedly. And it's no wonder that the Palestinians fight back. We may have our own opinions of what Hamas did, but the right of resistance for the Palestinians, for me, is absolute, and they are quite right to be resisting.
I don't think Israel has a real answer to what the end game is in Gaza. What is the objective? There are three options that you hear when you listen to different Israeli commentators and politicians. The first, which is perhaps the most realistic option, is that they want to teach Hamas a lesson, get some good ceasefire terms, and get the rockets stopped.
In 2019, they had the right of return, the big marches. They marched to the fence peacefully. They were mown down. Hundreds and hundreds of Palestinians were mown down. You know, women and children were shot.
We know for 27 years Nelson Mandela was called a terrorist. We know this. When he came out with the say hero, and people like Theresa May were reminded of their interviews when they called him terrorist. I'm not Israeli myself, but I have a lot of friends who are Jewish, and it's just wound me up, and it upsets me that, like, I'm the one that's get moved on by the police.
Would you agree that there's innocent men, women and children from Israel and Palestine
yes, of
being
course.
bombed?
Of course, 100%.
What do you think the answer is?
I don't know, but yes, I think there needs to be some sort of ceasefire or whatever, but I'm not even there. Bloodshed is just wrong. It's just crazy. But what gets my goat is that, like, they can all stand there shouting, but yeah, if you start sporting the Jewish people, you get shot down and moved on. Alright, because I'm in a minority.
No,
and if I go in there,
you're not in a minority. I'm trying to avoid any problems.
if I walk up to there with an Israeli flag, who's going to get elected? Me.
No, you're not. But I don't want you to get slaughtered. That's all.
This is starting with the Nakba, and they've forgotten about that. They think it's all started on the October the 7th. It hasn't. The Palestinians have been removed from their own area, from their own land, by the Zionists.
After the Ottoman Empire's collapse, the British and the French have redrawn the area which is today the Middle East. They promised a piece of land to Sharif Hussein, and along with that piece of land was supposed to be Palestine. In the Balfour Declaration, they did promise Palestine to be a safe haven, not Israel. They didn't say Israel, Palestine. And the Palestinian people, they did welcome the Jewish people that were running away from prosecution, rightly so. They were running away from prosecution because we were being prosecuted. But Zionism,
remember,
Zionism.
This is not a religious war.
Yeah.
This is nothing to do with religion. I'm a Muslim. I'm not against the Jewish, no Christianities or anything. I'm not against them. This is about the political leaders who have no idea what they're doing. Honestly.
But the thing is, with like, if you look at the story, for example, if we mention the story of the Hadids, if you've heard of Bella Hadid and Gigi Hadid, two models, they're originally from Palestine. Their father was Muhammad Hadid, and he used to live in Jaffa. When the Jewish settlers started coming in, and they had nowhere to go, he had a piece of land, he had a house, and he welcomed them in, he shared food with them, he shared, who would do that? Who would share their own food, their own house with a total stranger from Germany? And his wife was pregnant at the time. When she went to another city, because there was not many hospitals to give birth, obviously her husband went with her. When they came back, they found they'd been locked out of their own house. And they couldn't do anything about it. They became homeless. For the simple reason that they actually, out of kindness, they made a mistake. They didn't make a mistake by welcoming them, but they made a mistake by accepting certain ideology that they didn't even understand. Nobody in Palestine understood what Zionism was. What Zionism is always a majority in a certain piece of land. It didn't have to be Palestine, it could be Argentina, it could be any. But if we say that today to Israel, okay, you want peace, let's create one state equal for all. They will refuse that because that's now the basis of Zionism. The basis of Zionism is always have a majority Jewish population, because the moment you allow the Arab population or the Muslim population or the Christian population into one state with equal opportunities, they will be outvoted.
Now, there is a second objective put forward by some Israeli politicians, that they actually want to destroy Hamas. They want to replace Hamas in Gaza with Fatah, and they want to just have the peace talks with Fatah. Now, I have to say, in many ways, people might think that is a desirable outcome. It is so unlikely as to be a ridiculous objective. The idea that you can defeat a movement like Hamas, I think, in a military sense, I think is a nonsense. Hamas doesn't just exist in Gaza, it exists in people's minds. It exists in the West Bank, and therefore I think that is a ludicrous objective, although you do hear it put forward.
Daily in the West Bank at the moment, settlers are taking over Palestinian villages. They are armed, they are shooting people, they are killing people. That's happening. Not a blind bit of notice taken by the BBC or the press.
I've just come here as a son of a Second World War serviceman in my own country, and I am seeing a Volsky mine shaft, the same as the Nazis, with an Islamic interpretation of a world view, and I don't want that in this country, on my blooming soil.
Have you observed in the mainstream media that innocent men, women and children from Israel and Palestine are being bombed?
I don't deny that, but I would ask you, if you had a load of people bombing you from blooming Dewsbury, Bradford into Sheffield, would you expect your government to look after you?
I remind people, this is not from the 7th of October. This did not start the 7th of October. It started 6 years ago. From before. And even before, you're correct. And that's why we need to call them out. And for those of you who will be called out by their families and relatives because of the relationship that they might have with councillors, tell them, where do you stand? Do you stand with Palestine? Do you stand with so-called community leaders? Do you stand with politicians just because we voted for them all these years? No, we don't. And we are not free, like Martin Nelson Mandela said. We are not free until the Palestinian people are free. But we support these councillors who don't speak up, who don't support this motion, and instead go with party politics. Right, now they're going to be discussing. Thank you for listening anyway. Now they're going to be discussing. So let's say this all together. No amendments. No changes. No amendments. No changes. No amendments. No changes.
Actually, Israel in of itself is a destabilizer of the Middle East in the current moment in time. Because Israel, if you see what surrounds Israel, when Israel was made the state and kicked out all the Arabs, and all the Arab states surrounding it didn't actually want to go to war, but they were pressured to go to war because all these refugees come in and they are killing all these people. Like, they were forced into this conflict. They didn't want, if Israel didn't actually kick them out and live together, nobody, and I say nobody, would have fought them. So that's what I believe. And it is a destabilizer because it serves USA more than anyone else, and that's why they support them no matter what.
I only got one message to say, okay? And my message I've got to say, comes from my phone, okay? And this is my message.
Israeli are criminals, and that they are not trusted people. They don't tell the world the truth. They were taken to Palestine as refugees, and then they changed Palestine to become a state of Israel by force of arms given to them by Americans and the British.
But is it true that you say the Hitler...
So I'm just going to have to make a point here. We are actually taking legal advice on what I can actually produce. I may have to just edit that a little bit.
No problem.
But
no problem.
Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, no problem. You can edit that a little bit, but the truth is the truth. Okay? Even if you edit the truth, it will always come out.
The thing is,
at the end of the day, my problem is the death rate. Okay? People are dying. Okay? And the first motto of the West is do not kill. Okay? So if you say do not kill, why are you killing by airstrike? Okay? That's hypocritic. Okay? And we don't like hypocrites. So I'm here in solidarity with the Palestine, okay,
Thank you very much.
coming from 1917, 1948 and 2003. Okay? If we don't come together as humans, okay, humanity will always suffer. Yeah, forget Israel, forget America. As human beings, we need to have the attribute of love and peace. Forget about money, war, and guns. For how long have you had all these weapons?
Now, there is a third and possibly even more ludicrous option that is being touted around by some commentators, and that is that Israel could force Egypt to take responsibility for Gaza. Now, it is madness, but that is being advocated. President Mubarak just would not agree to that. And the problem is, this action is undermining President Mubarak. is playing into the hands of the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, what does Israel want? Does it want a radical Islamic government in Cairo? How damaging would that be to Israel's security? But if it continues in this, along this way, that is what will happen.
Obviously, in Palestine, we've got hospitals, innocent men, women and children, obviously hurt by bombings.
Yeah.
Hamas, allegedly, by Israel, they claim Hamas are in there. Do you think Israel are bombing those hospitals with Hamas in them?
I do.
Now then, if there was a building with Israeli hostages, do you think Israel would bomb that same building if Hamas was in that building?
It's really difficult to know. I don't. Very difficult to know.
There's a great deal of urgent feeling about this issue. Can we ask what the Middle East envoy is currently doing, the ex-Prime Minister, Mr Blair, who hasn't yet set foot in Gaza? And yet his premises in Jerusalem, the entire floor of a hotel, at a cost to the public purse of £700,000 per annum.
The action that Israel is now taking, difficult as it is about targeting not civilians. It is about targeting Hamas activists, about targeting Hamas weapons, its infrastructure and its tunnels.
Now, the manner in which Israel has acted since the invasion of Gaza has rightly horrified international opinion. It has certainly horrified me. It has demonstrated what only can be described as a totally callous indifference to civilian casualties. And I don't accept the view, which has been expressed by some, putting the Israeli viewpoint today, that it's because Hamas have used schools and mosques, etc., and this is the reason for the civilian casualties. I don't accept that at all. I believe that Israel is simply not caring at all, has not cared whatsoever how many casualties it has caused amongst the civilians. It's indifferent, unfortunately, as I see it, to Palestinian lives. Reference has been made to the number of Palestinian children, some 315, and some 95 women. And this is apart, of course, from those seriously injured, some paralysed for life. I read yesterday of a 2-year-old, of a 4-year-old, who is being paralysed for life. Paralysed for life.
What has happened in the last 3 weeks has escalated the suffering, the stress and the humanitarian trauma to the civilian population beyond anything that can be justified by any provocation. And I am actually appalled at members of this House trying to justify that degree of disproportionate action. 322 children have absolutely no responsibility for any of this, and they are dead.
It's wrong to come to the conclusion that Jews all over the world somehow unanimously support what Israel is doing. There are quite a number of Jews, be they in Britain or elsewhere, who are not only opposed but strongly, strenuously opposed in every possible way what is being done, and certainly should not be considered that this is being done in the name of Jews.
I was brought up as an Orthodox Jew and a Zionist. On a shelf in our kitchen was a tin box of the Jewish National Fund, into which we put coins to help the pioneers building a Jewish presence in Palestine. I first went to Israel in 1961, and I've been there since more times than I can count. I had family in Israel, and I have friends in Israel. One of them fought in the wars of 1956, 1967 and 1973, and was wounded in 2 of them. The tie clip which I'm wearing is made from a campaign decoration awarded to him, which he presented to me. I've known most of the Prime Ministers of Israel, starting with the founding Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion. Golda Meir was my friend. So was Yigal Allon, the Deputy Prime Minister, who as a general won the Negev for Israel in the 1948 War of Independence. My parents came to Britain as refugees from Poland. Most of their families were subsequently murdered by the Nazis in the Holocaust. My grandmother was ill in bed when the Nazis came to her hometown of Stachov. A German soldier shot her dead in her bed. Madam Deputy Speaker, my grandmother did not die to provide cover for Israeli soldiers murdering Palestinian grandmothers in Gaza. The present Israeli government ruthlessly and cynically exploit the continuing guilt among Gentiles over the slaughter of Jews in the Holocaust as justification for their murder of Palestinians. The implication is that Jewish lives are precious, but the lives of Palestinians do not count. On Sky News a few days ago, the spokeswoman for the Israeli army, Major Leibovich, was asked about the Israeli killing of, at that time, 800 Palestinians. The total is now 1,000. She replied instantly, 500 of them were militants. That was the reply of a Nazi. I suppose that Jews fighting for their lives in the Warsaw Ghetto could have been dismissed as militants. The Israeli Foreign Minister, Tzipi Livni, asserts that her government will have no dealings with Hamas because they're terrorists. Tzipi Livni's father was Eitan Livni, Chief Operations Officer of the terrorist Irgun Tzvai Leumi, who organised the blowing up of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, in which 91 victims were killed, including 4 Jews. Israel was born out of Jewish terrorism. Jewish terrorists hanged 2 British sergeants and booby-trapped their corpses. Irgun, together with the terrorist Stern Gang, massacred 254 Palestinians in 1948 in the village of Deir Yassin. Today, the present Israeli government indicate that they will be willing, in circumstances acceptable to them, to negotiate with the Palestinian President Abbas of Fatah. It's too late for that, Madam Deputy Speaker. They could have negotiated with Fatah's previous leader, Yasser Arafat, who was a friend of mine. Instead, they besieged him in a bunker in Ramallah, where I visited him. It's because of the failings of Fatah since Arafat's death that Hamas won the election, the Palestinian election in 2006. Hamas is a deeply nasty organisation, but it was democratically elected, and it is the only game in town. The boycotting of Hamas, including by our own government, has been a culpable error from which dreadful consequences have followed.
Absolutely.
The great Israeli Foreign Minister Abba Eban, with whom I campaigned for peace on many platforms, said, "You make peace by talking to your enemies." However many Palestinians the Israelis murder in Gaza, they cannot solve this existential problem by military means. Whenever and however the fighting ends, there will still be 1.5 million Palestinians in Gaza and 2.5 million more Palestinians in the West Bank who are treated like dirt by the Israelis, with hundreds of roadblocks and with the ghastly denizens of the illegal Jewish settlements harassing them as well. The time will come, not so long from now, when they will outnumber the Jewish population in Israel. It's time for our government to make clear to the Israeli government that its conduct and policies are unacceptable and to impose a total arms ban on Israel. It is time for peace, but real peace, not the solution by conquest, which is the Israelis' real goal, but which is impossible for them to achieve. They're not simply war criminals, they're fools.
When Israelis took over 100 Palestinians to what was considered to be a safe house, they put them there, over 100. And what happened? 24 hours later, Israeli military showed that same house, killing 30 or more. I only wish for my honourable friend from Riverside, putting the Israeli point of view, and I respect her point of view, however much I disagree with it, however strongly I feel she's wrong, I only wish she could have found herself when she made her speech in some way criticising what Israel has done. And I say this in conclusion. I've always advocated there must be a political solution, but there can't be a military solution. Israel cannot be destroyed. It can defend itself against any group or state, but it needs a political solution. And I'm afraid I'm not persuaded. I'm not persuaded that Israel has yet come to the point where it genuinely wants a Palestinian state, not some kind of state-led or satellite, but a genuine, viable and independent state. When Israel comes to that point of view, when it's really willing to negotiate in an honest manner to bring about to end the injustice that Palestinians have suffered for so many years, over 60 now, then will be the time to have that kind of political solution which hopefully can end the kind of bloodshed we've seen in the last few weeks.
My fear is, if things carry on as they are in this war, I wouldn't call it disproportionate, I wouldn't call it a war, I think it's become a slaughter. It's so severe now, Mr Deputy Speaker. I fear that Gaza will end up as nothing but a bandit land when this is all over and done with. And it won't ultimately be Hamas that the Israelis have to deal with. It's likely to be far more extreme organisations. Al-Qaeda themselves are likely to end up, Al-Qaeda core and other derivative organisations, and I think that will make life much, much harder. In my own constituency, I've been fortunate enough in the last few days to be able to spend some serious and some good time with young Muslim people who are doing everything that they can to keep the bonds of community in my local community. 3 young girls, Afifa, Tasnim and Sophia, took it upon themselves to organise a march in the town centre last Saturday. Nearly 300 people attended, and they were determined that this should be about children, it should be about women, it should be about people of all faiths actually showing sympathy for those that have been killed on all sides of this conflict. They also wanted to make it clear that they wanted to condemn the rockets coming in from Hamas as well as the disproportionate action from the Israeli military.
The children are always ours, every single one, every one. Not in my name, not in my name, not in my name, not in my name, not in my name.
What do you think is the answer to this war?
The one-state solution. Equal rights, like South Africa, equal rights for everyone. Equal rights for everyone, whether you're Jewish, you're not, by the way, you're not the chosen people of God. You want to be the chosen people of God, do good. You'll be chosen by then. But the thing is, if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're whatever it is, even if you worship Satan, you have the same opportunities as everyone else. But for the apartheid state to exist, it has to have a privilege for certain people, which was the same with South Africa, the privilege for certain people, and to demonize and to create certain, or to dehumanize others, like what happened in South Africa, where they called Nelson Mandela a terrorist, which he wasn't, and he proved it by, well, as soon as he came into office, he did not go after those people that imprisoned him and tried to kill him multiple times. He killed these people multiple times. He actually showed kindness, and if they do the same tomorrow, Palestinian people will show kindness.
Arafat was the man who had the peace for Palestine, okay? But with politics and with the way human leaders, America became Israel from a state of refugee and arms, which is wrong.
We are here today to show them that we will not rest until they are given their basic rights of freedom, which is why we must call now for a ceasefire. Ceasefire now!
You're talking about Palestine, because what? They are a minority. Why don't you go bully China? Why don't you go bully North Korea? Because they've got the same strength as you. So because Palestine has got no strength, the same strength as you want to show that you pull it. We know. You've done it in 22 countries, so we know. You know what I mean? From the UK empire to whatever name, whatever, to the Balfour, whatever name you want to call it, the Biafra, whatever name you want to call it, what happened in South Africa. So enough is enough.
To this day, there has been 11,000 murders. 60% of them are kids and women. Kids. Mothers are burying their children. They start writing their names on their bodies so that if they die, they will be able to identify them. How can people live like this? How can we sit here and condone this genocide and these disgusting war crimes? The use of white phosphorus, cutting off humanitarian aid, targeting residential buildings, hospitals, mosques, schools, refugee camps, universities. How does the world sit idle? We watch the IDF lie about the bombing of hospitals, killing 400 innocents. We watch the IDF shoot 23-year-olds for throwing a stone at them. We watch them destroy our beloved Gaza. I spent nights in houses where children I befriended would scream in their sleep for their mother, thinking that they had been killed until we wake them up. I've met close friends like Mejid and Juju, who lost 40 of his friends, all martyred in the war, innocents, all around the age of 20, young lives with unfulfilled potential. He travelled to Gaza amongst the bombing just to rescue his cat. I had to leave him behind, and I think about him every minute, wondering if he is still alive, he is still in Gaza, amongst the rest of my family and friends. Yes, I managed to make it back home, but at what cost? I left my people to continue feeling the damage and terror while I sit home. The guilt is unbearable. People risk their lives just to go to the shop or to fill up water from local tanks. This is not life. I've seen the chaos with my own eyes. Little girls being pulled from under the rubble, faces covered in dust, blood dripping off their face. That was a girl with a dream of having a family or being married. That boy's body you see on Instagram, he wanted to be a footballer. He wore the same Ronaldo jersey every single day because that's all his parents could afford. His friends wanted to be doctors, pilots, engineers. They're killing our youth and justifying this. We must hold them accountable. I've seen bodies charred to a crisp, laying on stretchers, ambulance after ambulance rushing to the scene as people hurry to put the bodies in the back of the ambulance as a hope of saving them. Again, most of them were kids. Once I was finishing up my haircut on the barbers and I heard 2 consecutive impacts not so far away. We took a taxi up to my auntie's to have dinner and I asked my father if he had visited any sites today. Within 10 seconds we noticed massive chaos on the right side of the street, smoke everywhere. We jumped out the taxi and approached the scene where 350 people were gathered in a neighbourhood which was unrecognisable. Walls missing from the houses, cars demolished, broken glass and chunks of building all across the street. We watched body after body put into the back of the ambulances with the asbestos filling the air and people shouting in disbelief. Shortly after, me and my father found ourselves running with the crowd as we heard the whistle of another S-16 missile which was nearby. 350 people running for their lives, all hard workers, given a disadvantage at being normal human beings. This is criminal. The final example I will give is the day they bombed and massacred Hatem and Aziz al-Fadl and his family, 10 meters from our house. My only living grandparent, Teta Melkia, had come with my little cousin to stay with us as she had been undergoing bombardment in Beni Sela and was too scared to stay in her own home. I assured her, Teta, you are safe here. Little did I know she would be in for a terrifying experience. After 5 hours of supposed ceasefire, I took her to the guest room to sleep and went to my room, laid in bed wide awake, peeping through my windows as I heard the drones resurface after the quiet. All of a sudden, all I could hear was the F-16s and the buzzing noise of the drones, which is normal, and at this point doesn't faze me anymore. It's sad. I got used to the bombing to the point I wouldn't flinch. The buzzing became a background noise in my head. Now I'm back, the silence was open. Suddenly in this moment, I witnessed 2 flashes of bright orange, lighting up the sky through the window, and then I heard the tremendous impact of the shell plummet to the ground. Bang! The 2 missiles ruptured the neighbourhood, shaking everyone's building, shattering our windows, sending a cloud of smoke and asbestos into our living room, sending shock and fear into hearts everywhere. I genuinely thought in this moment that we were dead. The impact was so close that my first thought was our house had been hit. I jumped out of my bed and ran to my grandmother's room, making sure it was not her room that was hit. I picked her up and took her to the living room, calming her down, telling her, "You are alive, Tata, you are fine, do not worry." Of course, how can she not worry? We are meters away from death. She is a 70-year-old woman who should not be put through this terror and was visibly shook and couldn't sit still. The smoke was visible in my room as you watched particles fly through the air. The wailing of women and the screaming of young kids filled the air. Men shouting in rage. The floor covered in glass as I ran in my bare feet and boxers to the balcony to see where I was hit. I started running the names of possible families who could have been hit through my head, worrying that it was close family. My father ran to the street and I followed him. The water tanks flooded the streets as the impact knocked them off the buildings. It was everywhere. I followed my father as he watched as his cousins Aziz and Hatim were put on stretchers. People calling for Allah in disbelief. My cousin shouting and holding me back from the scene so I do not see the horrors of the attack. The sheer panic of another F-16 was still in the air, but no one cares. They want to get these people straight to the hospital and help the injured. That's how brave the Palestinians are. I witnessed this all in front of me, and I could go into more harrowing details, like the fact half of a woman's body was thrown across a row of buildings into the other street to later be discovered, or how a little girl's head was blown off. But in simple words, another massacre committed by the IDF, condoned by our own Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who has voiced his support for Israel. 16 of my family were killed this day, 7 of them kids. Rishi Sunak is allowing our country to take part in the murder of kids. My grandmother came from danger to witness more danger. There is nowhere safe in the Gaza Strip. People leave one side to go somewhere equally as dangerous. They make people travel to the south just to make it easier for them to target us. You saw yesterday the families walking 7 kilometers, being expelled from their homes to somewhere they don't even know is safe. One of them was 90 years old, she survived the last Nakba, and now she's being expelled from her home. Again, this is a repeat of history. They want to talk about the 7th of October. Let's talk about the Balfour Declaration, the Nakba catastrophe, where 700,000 displaced from their homes, 532 villages wiped off the map by Zionist militia, the Deir Yassin and Khan Yunis massacre. Let's talk about 2014, when 11 of my little cousins, all younger than 9, were murdered in a single Israeli airstrike. We are watching a mass exodus, genocide, massacre, collective punishment, all before our own eyes. They take our water and then provide us with supposed humanitarian aid. Why should we celebrate humanitarian aid when it is a war crime to take water away from people in the first place? These are acts of the Israeli government. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Justice, justice, Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
I think, if we want peace in Gaza, if Israel wants security, the only possibility is to have a people, the Palestinian people, who are not oppressed and can return to their own lands. I think the two-state solution is no longer viable, and they have to have a single state where, as in the past, Jews and Palestinians, Muslims live peacefully alongside each other.